Hi everyone, I hope you're doing well today. I'm really glad that you've joined me for this inaugural edition of Dr. Mack's Organizational Behavior Hack. My name is Dave McIntyre, and I'm a professor who predominantly teaches emergency management, homeland security, and national security. However, I also appreciate the topics of leadership and management. They're certainly vital in both business and public administration. With that in mind, the purpose of this video and the series that will follow is to share what I hope will be useful information about the theoretical and practical aspects of how organizations operate. In addition, my desire is that we will all better comprehend how organizations can function to the highest levels possible as individuals and groups understand and apply the principles of human interaction. In this particular video, our learning objectives are to first define what organizational behavior is, second, discuss the relevance of organizational behavior theory and its practical application, third, distinguish between the values of private and public organizations, and finally, assess why approaching the subject of organizational behavior with a systems approach is necessary. So, let's get started. To understand organizational behavior, we first need to comprehend what an organization is. Chester Bernard is an expert and a consultant in public management. He states that an organization is created when two or more people decide to work together to implement deliberate activities that they agree upon. A business or a local government or a nonprofit organization are just some of the many types of organizations that come to mind. Other scholars assert that organizations are comprised of a collection of individuals that identify goals and then structure their efforts to obtain them. Of course, this does not necessarily mean that everyone in the organization agrees with the objectives or works harmoniously at all times. There can be disagreements about what should be done and how that should be accomplished in any organization. For instance, leaders, managers, and employees may view the goals or means to accomplishing them in a very different perspective. An owner or a mayor may want to increase profits or change the organization to meet expectations for the future. A manager may want to run things effectively or efficiently. In contrast, the workers may want leaders or managers to be aware of the barriers they face while performing their jobs or recognize reasons why a new way of doing things is necessary or could be detrimental. This brings up the concept of organizational behavior. Organizational behavior is a theoretical concept that is related to the disciplines of business management, public administration, and nonprofit management. It examines how individuals and teams communicate and work together or against each other, as the case may be, in organizations. The purpose of this academic concept is to explore why people do what they do in organizations and hopefully alter that behavior in a positive manner. In this sense, organizational behavior is closely related to psychology. But knowing a lot about human behavior in organizations is not enough. Organizational behavior is also an applied behavioral science that aims to improve interactions and processes within organizations to facilitate goal attainment. In other words, organizational behavior recommends the application of various principles that will help leaders and managers and workers be successful for the benefit of the business, the nonprofit organization, or the government entity. For instance, trust must be cultivated in the organization through clear communication, the showing of mutual respect, and rewards for employees that fulfill their duties in accordance with the company policies or government laws, regulations, and other expectations. Simply put, organizational behavior is important because we all belong to or are affected by organizations. We are all members of families or churches, participants in clubs, hobby groups, and professional associations, or we are employees of businesses and government departments and agencies. These organizations can make our lives better through relationships, fun and entertainment, and a common purpose. They can also provide us an income and fulfill functions ranging from education and public safety to public utilities, public transportation, and social welfare. Conversely, if the organizations we belong to or are impacted by are dysfunctional, this may result in declining profitability, wasted tax revenue, and other negative consequences. Let's look at this in a different way. If an organization has a culture of fear and distrust, people may become dissatisfied with work and seek employment elsewhere. Arguments can occur among different units within businesses and government, leading to interpersonal and interorganizational conflict. Or, an organization that cannot achieve goals may have to lay off employees or shut down altogether. Therefore, knowing how to avoid potential problems within an organization, or how to foster successful relationship within organizations, is key to making them successful. Perhaps some examples may help draw this out further. Blockbuster was a powerhouse of a company several decades ago. It rented VHS tapes and DVDs to millions of people who wanted to watch movies at home. Unfortunately, the leaders did not understand advances in entertainment technology and were not open to change. Zappos is an online shoe company that has grown considerably since its inception. Its motto is to serve others, and employees are asked to commit to this priority. In fact, it's been reported that service is such an important cultural priority in this organization that the employees that cannot commit to this goal will be given a severance pay of $2,000 if they leave the company within the first 2 weeks of employment. These examples illustrate the importance of organizational culture in the private sector. Now, let's look at 2 examples related to the government's space program. Concerns about possible O-ring failures were expressed by engineers in Morton Thiokol, the company contracted by the government to build the booster rockets for the space shuttle. Tragically, these worries were not heeded by supervisors and key leaders. It appears that decision makers were not open to communication in this particular company. This resulted in the fatal explosion of the Space Shuttle Challenger in January of 1986. Alternatively, there were a whole host of government agencies that worked together collaboratively for years to send astronauts to the moon, and they even helped return others safely to Earth after the explosion on the Apollo 13 spacecraft. Thus, it is clear that organizational behavior can have a positive or negative impact on the success of a business, government, or nonprofit agency. The other point I want to mention about organizational behavior is that different types of organizations have distinct values and priorities. Companies typically want to make money, of course, whereas a government organization generally wants to serve the populace within their jurisdiction, whether it be at the local, state, tribal, or federal levels. These values can prove problematic at times. The profit motive can create tensions between owners, managers, and employees. The public good is up to interpretation in public service organizations, so there can be a conflict between conservatives and liberals that work in government. Or perhaps the government is not as nimble as it should be. This reminds me of a joke I once heard. What's the difference between the mafia and the government? One is organized and the other is not. Of course, that's certainly not the case most of the time. I want to share a final observation with a few examples. As we examine organizational behavior, we need to keep in mind systems thinking. In other words, we need to explore how the individuals or the units interact with each other and within the entire organization. For instance, we may need to look at how owners, management, and labor interact within the organization. Do they have different concerns about productivity, profit, working conditions, and pay? Another example of systems thinking relates to the structure of corporations. Do employees accept the guidelines for annual evaluations established by human resources? Is there harmful competition among research and development and those within operations? Are the rules regarding procurement and finances barriers for those working within the organization? Sometimes there can be conflict among the different functional units within organizations, so we must examine the big picture. In the context of government, each department may experience challenges or conflict as they interact with other agencies. Each unit is competing with others to get their portion of the overall budget. And in certain situations, various units may not see eye to eye on things. For instance, the police and fire departments may have distinct objectives in a mass casualty accident. Law enforcement may want to keep traffic moving, while fire wants to take care of victims. Another way of looking at organizations from a systemic perspective is to explore different levels of analysis. Should we focus on the interaction of individuals, groups, or the entire enterprise? Each one of these levels of analysis, or their combination, may provide useful insights into how organizations behave. In addition, we may need to look at the entire organization. What are the goals of the organization? What does the organization want to accomplish, and what resources are available to enable such objectives? How are decisions made, and what are the consequences of those choices and actions? Is the organization open to feedback on a daily basis and change over time? These are just some of the topics that are addressed when we take a systems perspective. Finally, there are many topics associated with organizational behavior, and these stem from different disciplines and theoretical viewpoints. A systems approach must consider values and the distinct differences between leaders and managers. We must recognize the role of values and culture and how power may impact team dynamics. Organizations must constantly learn and approach decision-making carefully. Communication and collaboration undoubtedly have a significant impact on organizations. Efforts must be made to manage conflict and change. In addition, leaders and managers must understand ethics, justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion, as well as the impact of physical space or the use of technology on organizations. These are just some of the many topics that are important for organizational behavior. To conclude, let me reiterate that organizational behavior is a theoretical concept, and it also provides practical recommendations for leaders, managers, and employees. Organizational behavior is important since we all participate in and are affected by all types of organizations. Business and government entities may have different organizational priorities. And finally, in order to understand organizational behavior and improve businesses and government, we must take a systemic approach. If you would like further information on these topics, there are several great books available. The two listed on this slide are particularly useful for businesses and government organizations. But there are many more. Search organizational behavior on the internet, and you'll find others. Well, I've taken enough of your time. I hope this introductory video was helpful. If so, please give a like. Have a great day.